Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Outside Insider podcast here on Philly Sports Network with myself, Liam Jenkins, where you know the score by now. All things Eagles related. The last 7 days wrapped up and stuffed inside Yannick Ngakwe's left shoe, just for you to listen to on this very quiet Friday evening. I say that very loosely because I know that every time I seem to upload one of these podcasts, the Eagles go and make a move, and that's been a trend for about a year now. It's happened with the videos as well. Talking of which, if you're on the YouTube channel, welcome. You'll see in the first 10 minutes of this podcast. The rest of it can be downloaded from the following platforms, if I remember them all. We've got Apple, we've got Spotify, Stitcher, I'm out already, Google Podcasts, all of them. Alright, wherever you get your podcasts, Deezer, yeah, and even Yannick Ngakwe's right shoe. It's on there as well. So if you want to listen to that podcast, that'd be fantastic. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, the best way to help it grow, obviously, Apple Podcasts. If you leave a rating of 5 stars, hit subscribe to it. It's free, doesn't cost you a penny. Best way to support the show. It's been a little bit of a hiatus for the Outside Insider podcast, mainly because, I'm not going to lie to you, it's hard doing a weekly podcast where it's just one of you and there's not much going on. I mean, it very rapidly deteriorates into LJ's love life stories, which are fine in some capacity, but then they wear thin after a while, so we have to stockpile them for the good days. And obviously now with free agency underway, there's a lot to talk about. The Eagles from Wednesday until today have ended up making a flurry of moves, 2 notable signings, a few re-signings, and obviously the rest of the players have been let go, so to speak, so that's always good. There's a lot to get through. I did just want to start out though with a big thank you more than anything, purely because the last week has been beyond stressful. I mean, I've still got another can of Red Bull here, okay? It's not sponsored podcast yet, I'm afraid, guys, but I've literally demolished a 12-pack of these in about 2 weeks. It's been a very, very rocky period from like just 13-hour days pretty much trying to give you the best free agency coverage we can. And it was been you guys that have really spurred me on to push that extra bit harder to get, when I get home or it's like 5 in the morning to report on the Darius Slade trade, or if it's 1 a.m. here to get that extra video out on Javon Hargrave, because I want you guys to have the best content possible, and the support that you're showing me in return for that is unbelievable. So just thank you for taking time out of what is a very stressful period for all of you. I know over there in America, or wherever you're listening to this, the coronavirus is a heavy topic. Everyone's a little bit stressed out. To just add in a little bit of sunshine or a little bit of humour or just a bit of a distraction from the stress of the outside world is, what I'm aiming to do with this. So I'm glad that I'm able to do that for you. And thank you for taking times out of those hectic schedules to just let me be a part of it. It's always a pleasure. But I wanted to start today's show with something that I don't think has been spoken about enough. And I think it's partly in 2 reasons. One of them is because that the Darius Slade trade happened a day later, which is never good. It kind of automatically moves the scope onto the new player. It's always the next big thing, isn't it? And I think the other reason is that it's not the sexy, flashy, heroic move. It's a very Howie move. It's a very Eagles move, isn't it? To bolster through the trenches. So I want to take a minute to talk about Javon Hargrave, because I think the Eagles may have got probably so far the steal of free agency here. And I don't just mean in terms of, they've got a very good nose tackle, it doesn't cost a lot. I mean in relative terms to the rest of the contracts being signed, to where players are going right now, to where the pressure is on other franchises. I think the Eagles have been very forward thinking here, which doesn't surprise me with Howie Roseman. And they've filled a very under-the-radar need, but it's one that has been pressing them for quite some time. And we know the argument I always give, right? With that in 2017, Bo Allen, Destiny Vio, 50% of defensive snaps. And since then, it's just been an absolute injury carousel with no one able to really do anything. I think for me, going on from that, it was like, okay, well, let's just see production-wise in 2019. Forget depth for the minute. Forget your DT3 and your DT4. Let's just look at some stats. Let's just talk raw numbers and see, was the interior pass rush that good? Because on the surface, to the naked eye, to the unsuspecting general NFL fan that tunes in on a Sunday, maybe puts in NFL Network on an Instagram story and says, yeah, because that's what general NFL fans do, I think, probably. Right, so let's just look at this. Okay, right. The Eagles had 43 sacks last year. 43. 43 of them last year. That puts them 6th in the league. 6th, alright? Top 10 It's going well. You think that's a very good year, considering the Eagles were without Timmy Jernigan, considering they were without Malik Jackson, considering that Hassan Ridgeway went down. Like, that's a good number to have. Like, fair play, Jim Schwartz. 10 of those sacks came in one game against the New York Jets. And we all seem to forget that. We all seem to forget that 7 games last year, the Eagles had 1 sack or less. Not ideal. Not ideal at all. And that worried me a lot. That got me thinking. So what I did was assume the average number of sacks for the Eagles on the year, which if you take 43, you divide it by 16, you get a number, probably. Maths isn't very good, I'm not going to lie. But it's around 3-ish, okay? Around 3 sacks. But let's take away that 10 and see what the Eagles would be left with, all right? You take away like 8. Let's say take away 7. Right, so you bring that New York Jets game down to around 3 sacks. Okay, that would put them 24th in the league. 24th in the league in sacks. That's not good enough. It was not good enough all year long. And you can attribute this for many different reasons. You can look at it and say, alright, well, maybe it was the secondary. Maybe the secondary wasn't helping. Well, yeah, but at the same vein, the Eagles are getting home. They're getting the pressures. They're just not putting the icing on the cake. And that had been the big thing. So, you go and look at Javon Hargrave's sacks. Javon Hargrave's stats, anything else beginning with S and ending in S? Socks. He had 4 sacks in 2019. More importantly, though, his 49 quarterback pressures were the 10th most in the league among interior defensive linemen. The only 3 better, off the top of my head, were Aaron Donald, Vita Vea. I can't remember the third one. So, you've got 2 there. All right, we're just keeping you guessing. That's what we're doing, keeping you on your toes. He had the 4th most hurries in the league. He was the 8th best interior defensive lineman per Pro Football Focus behind Fletcher Cox. Now, the only reason that Hargrave got out of Seattle to begin with, the situation isn't ideal. They run a 3-4. You've got Cam Hayward, you've got Steven Tuitt, and in a year where then Brad Dupree breaks out, and you've got Javon Hargrave breaking out despite playing in like 50% of snaps. He only just started to play pass blocking snaps, really. This was a recent addition to his game. Obviously being a nose tackle, you're expected to be a big boy, to be a thick, Brucey boy, to clog those lanes. And this was the first year that the Steelers kind of cut him loose. And he's got a lot of electricity in his play. And I haven't watched a tremendous amount of tape. I've watched 2 games on him, trying to get this film room done for you guys for around Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Then working on Darius. So there's a lot in the pipeline. But you see, with the scope, that he's just kind of outplayed Pittsburgh. They've got to make a choice. The Steelers have to choose. Do we keep around someone that's playing 50% of snaps, or do we want a Cam Hayward? Do we want a Brad Dupree? Do we want a Steven? I think as a 3-tech, that's the important bit. As a 3-tech, I think he's got a lot of upside. And if we take that role as the 3-tech, and you imagine the Eagles' defensive line of having Fletcher Cox here, you've got Javon Hargrave next to him, the 5-tech spot, the next spot along, I think you can give to Malik Jackson. I think Malik Jackson is going to be the Michael Bennett of this Eagles defense. I said it last year before he got injured. I think the skill set he brings is very Michael Bennett-esque. He's played both the 3 and the 5 role in Jacksonville. I think he's got that potential. He's got that electricity. And if you look at the Eagles defensive end depth chart where you've got Brandon Graham's locked up, that's fine. Derek Barnett, 4th year. No guarantee the Eagles will pick up his 5th year option. And behind that, Sharif Miller hasn't done anything. Josh Sweat is unreliable. Deshaun Hall barely got on the field except for that week 4 game against the New York Jets. And overall, I just feel as though the Eagles have a more pressing need. They need to get some versatility up front with guys like Jannard Avery as well, a stand-up pass rusher. I think this is a very, very strong move. For the pricing it is as well. It's basically a Malik Jackson contract take 2. It's a very good deal for someone of his size, of his stature, and more than anything, Fletcher Cox finally has some long-term stability alongside him. Cox's production went down last year. You cannot afford to take away any leverage from Cox. The second teams can double team Cox, they will. It's a given. He's too good. If it wasn't for Aaron Donald, we'd be talking for a generationally gifted pass rusher. There's no doubt in my mind about it. So you have to give him that support. And I don't think that... and do you know what? This signing isn't sexy. It wasn't Byron Jones. It wasn't going out and trading for DeAndre Hopkins. It wasn't one of the star running backs. It wasn't a Todd Gurley. but it's someone that is going to not only benefit the secondary by forcing mobile quarterbacks to run outside into the clasps of those defensive ends, but more than anything, help add to a punishing run game. We know the Eagles have always prioritized stopping the run. It's going to take some weight off of Fletcher Cox. It's going to allow a name like Hassan Ridgeway, like Anthony Rush to grow. And it's going to cost them tiddlywinks. So just looking at his contract here. So obviously we know 3 years, $39 million, 11 million signing bonus, 26 million of it's guaranteed. But according to SpotTrack, this is how it lays out. So he makes 1 million base salary in 2020. It's another Howie backloaded deal. It's a $5 million cap hit, then a $16 million cap hit in 2021. So the Eagles are expecting, based off that framework, maybe a baby step year, a growth year, to find that role to feel at home. 2021, they're expecting big things. And with the salary cap increasing every year, that number's going to be fairly average. I think we're going to see a Fletcher Cox extension between 2021 and 2022 anyway. And then they've got an out in 2022. And it would leave them with just 3 million, or 3.9 million, I should say, in cap space, in dead cap space. If they keep him on, another 16 million, undrafted free agent 2023. He's 27 years old. That's in his prime. This isn't a guy who's 32. Isn't a guy that is maybe a bit younger like Ngakoue. This is in his prime. Coming off a career year at 27. We know the Howie Roseman prototype. 27, 28 years old. That's a given. And then it's either played his way out of a team, coming off a bad year, wanting a prove-it deal. I think that first year he's very prove-it to me. It's, taking a fair amount of cap hit, still $5 million, but then you get to year 2. It's very, very interesting. I think the Eagles are expecting big things from this man. This is going to be a cornerstone piece. And do you know what? Just for the sake of a podcast analogy, we know we know what's coming. We know the Motor Trend GMC Truck of the Year 2020-2021 absolute hybrid. It's Javon Hargrave. That's a dream move. That you couldn't ask for a better free agency move. No, it wasn't a linebacker. But the Eagles seemingly don't value them anyway, so I don't know why we'd be expecting anything different. This is a very, very strong move for the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's something I think we should all be really excited about. We should all get behind. And I'm just excited to see what he can do. I can't wait to break down the tape on this man in full depth, because the traits that he flashes are absolutely devastating to an already dominant pass rush. If you can lift those stats up, you can raise that bar, you get the pass rush back to where it needs to be, and then you add in Darius Slay, someone that is going to be a lockdown corner, that is going to force a quarterback to sit in the pocket, come off that first read, come off Amari Cooper, come off Terry McLaurin, whoever it may be. And you focus on those tight ends, or you focus on the running backs, where you have to move around. It's going to give someone like Hargrave that leverage, that time to get home, to open things up for the defensive end. This, for me, is a move that, while it doesn't naturally impact linebacker, while it doesn't naturally impact corner, the butterfly effect of his presence on the field will do a lot of damage. And that's what I'm very excited about. But that's it for part 1 of the podcast, guys. Now, part 2, we're going to answer your questions in a little show that I like to call Thank You Next. I always ask for your questions on Twitter. You send them in. We've got like 13 of them today, so we're going to dive through those. And then I'm going to talk about Darius Slay at the end of the show. If you want to see more of this podcast, guys, if you're on YouTube, hello again. You're amazing. It will be out a little bit later this evening on all good podcasting platforms. If you're into the podcast still and you're listening on your way in from work or at home in this self-quarantining universe we're living in, strap yourselves in. It's time to ask Thank You Next.